Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're doing well. Welcome to the workshop with me, Phil. And today I am stitching in the gussets of a tote bag. So this is the bag I'm working on at the moment. Still needs flattening out some of the creases, etc. on the side and the gussets. So it's not in its finished state yet, but just to give you a general idea, the bag we're working on with internal canvas lining. And the top, we have a unique feature here, which is a stitched in wooden hardwood dowel, which is what the handle's attached to, but they also rotate. So the handle can be placed on the inside and you can use it without the straps, just with the handle, as you can see it there. So that's the design. And today the gussets are going in. So they've been glued in place, ready to be stitched. Now about halfway through the actual stitching process on one side. It's rather lengthy. So a good amount of thread on this. Welcome guys, thank you for joining me. And at any time, if anybody has any questions, feel free to go ahead and ask. So I'm just doing some stitching so I can talk at the same time. So the thread that I'm using here is 0.7 millimeters, so quite thick, as this is more of a casual tote on this particular case. So once this is done, I'll be able to go around and finish the edges. Guys, hopefully you can hear me now. I actually forgot to turn on my microphone on the first try, and people were telling me that there's no sound, so I had to redo it. Hopefully everything works okay now. Guys, if you can hear me and the sound is good, can you just give me a thumbs up or just let me know the sound is okay? It's a new microphone system that I got for doing lives. So quite a few feet of stitching on this. But I am using a slightly larger pricking iron. For this design, I've gone with 3.85. I mean, you can go finer if you want to, but on quite a casual, everyday bag, I don't think it's necessary. And you can use slightly chunkier contrast stitching, because this is, after all, quite a simple design. Oops. The only thing is this kind of bag is made of quite soft leather. It's a nice semi-pigmented calf hide that I've been working from here. And it's a hole cut too. So this entire piece on one side goes round the base and round the other side. So it's not a separate base. The panels on the side are attached to the base, and the base is actually stiffened from the inside. And that gives a little bit more of a unique look. There's not many brands that actually do that, because on a manufacturing scale, it's actually more expensive to do. But as long as you've got a hide that without too many imperfections, it doesn't make any difference for individual artisans to create hole cut bags, as long as you've got the space and the hide size to do it. You could probably get this on the average cowhide shoulder. Probably not a calf shoulder, but certainly on a cowhide shoulder. So I'm stitching with a roundel here. I'm actually aligning up stitch holes on both the gusset and the bag. And I'm using a roundel to go through first of all, because it's quite thick and you've also got 2 layers of canvas to go through. It just makes it easier and opens up the holes a little bit. Otherwise, if I just try to do it with needles, with that many layers, I probably end up needing the pliers. Cool. So John James 004 needles on this one, so nothing too big. I pretty much use that size for like 95% of my leather work, to be honest. So coming up to a corner here, and what I've done, because normally when you stitch, if you try and pair these up, the outside of the leather, the bag, the panels and the base, is actually a slightly greater distance than the internal gusset. So the internal corners actually have a slightly tighter stitch spacing to get around that, so that we don't have to what you call lose a stitch, which is where you fall out of alignment and you have to kind of get rid of one stitch on one side so that you bring it back into alignment. So on this one, I've actually, because it's a tight corner, I've gone for a 2.7 millimeter stitch spacing, which has actually worked out perfectly. As you can see, I'm fighting with quite a bit of thread. I'm doing this as an all-in-one. When I'm using thick thread, I find that it's a little bit more difficult to end a seam and then start another one without it being noticeable. Because there are a few ways to do it without being able to see it, but usually it involves hiding a little bit of bulk. And when you've got massive thread, well, not massive, but quite thick thread, especially when it's cabled, it's a little bit more difficult to do. So I've gone with just a very long piece of thread, which should get me around the entire gusset all in one. Well, that's the theory anyway. It just means it slows you down considerably. Oops. And that happens. You keep catching because there's so much thread. Any little tiny thing that sticks out. But this is such a soft bag, it doesn't stand up by itself. Otherwise, I'd set it up on the table and stitch around it. But it doesn't really hold its own weight. Well, it will, but it's very, very easy to knock it over. So coming up to the first corner now. So as I mentioned before, it's tighter stitch spacing. And this means that I don't have to stick 56 needles around every corner. It's just a very simple stitch all the way around. So the inside is getting much tighter now. And it's changing angles, so it's kind of following the path of the corner of the turn. Tighter again. So it was actually just guesstimation. I was actually going to go with 3 millimeters on the inside. I kind of changed my mind at the last minute. I'm kind of glad I did now. I'll try and prop this up on the table in a second. See if I can stitch it on there so you guys can get a closer look. And we're back into alignment. So that was good. Cool. Alrighty. See if we can move you guys around so you can have a slightly better view. I'm going to unplug the charger, excuse me. Move you onto this side. Sorry guys if I'm giving you a headache here. Alrighty. Let's move that crease in a bit more so it doesn't set. So a little awkward at this angle, but it gives you guys a better idea of what I'm actually doing. There you go. I think the thicker thread on this kind of suits it. It stands out a little bit more. And it adds a kind of another feature really. Especially if you're doing several feet of stitching, you kind of want to showcase your work in some way. Okay, if you guys are tuning in from around the world, feel free to tell me where you're actually watching from. I'm stuck here in the United Kingdom of Great Britain. If you guys are working on any new projects, it'd be interesting to see what you guys are up to, what you're working on, and where in the world you're doing it. Hello, Carney says, hi Phil, hope everything's good. Could I ask a question regarding the bell skiver? Yes, you can. Of course you can. Sorry, I'm just going to move this up. Nicholas says, hello sir, hope your recovery is going well. Yes, this is the first stitching that I've done since the surgery on my hand. So it's like week 3, week 4. So it's healing up quite well. The skin on the surface is kind of peeling away now, but yeah, pretty nasty cut. It wasn't done via Leathercraft, just in case anyone was thinking that. It was actually being careless with a kitchen knife that was extremely sharp. You know how I love my sharp knives. Yeah, so that's that. So I don't have any feeling in my finger anymore, so I have to kind of use my thumb to feel the pressure as I'm stitching. Especially for this bit, I can't feel anything, so I have to, when I press with my thumb, I can then get an idea of how hard I'm pressing. But eventually, hopefully, the nerve should kick back in, because it was actually stitched. So I got little micro stitches on the artery and also the the nerve on the inside there. I should have asked what kind of stitch they used. That'd be interesting, wouldn't it? Would it be funny if they use a saddle stitch? Funnily enough, all the stitches have come out about a week ago. And some of them were cross stitches, it looks like, and then some of them were actually butt stitches. There's part of me that would actually find it quite funny to have little tiny scars from all the stitches. That'd be quite novel. Hello from Norway, says Tryan. Sorry, phone's at a weird angle, it's difficult to read. What motor do you use in your skiver? I notice in the course it's incredibly quiet. PS is quite the scar. It's what you're seeing is new skin, and this is just old skin, like the surface layer where there's no blood flow. So that will actually eventually go, and I can see a tiny faint line. It's actually very, 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 very small. I don't think I'll have much of a scar on it, to be honest. I mean, it was a very clean cut. What kind of motor is on it? I think it's a 400-watt induction motor, I believe is what it is. They're generally quite quiet. It's kind of the kind of motor that you would get on like a bench grinder or a drill press, that kind of thing. They're usually quite quiet. But it just came with it. It's a high lead, the brand. So it's it just kind of just came with it. I didn't buy it separately. Yeah, some motors are built differently. Maybe you've got like a brushless one or something, and it's going to sound a little different. I tend to find brushless quite loud. Yeah, nice little angled stitches across my hand. That would be that would be quite interesting. Maybe if there is a big scar across there, what I can do is have like a tattoo artist put in some what looks like angled stitches. I'm not serious. I wouldn't do that. But yeah, that'd be quite funny, wouldn't it? The stitcher gets stitched. It was quite scary, the thought of the first thing gone through my mind. I could feel after the accident that I didn't have any feeling. And I was quite worried that it was going to affect my ability to craft, but, it hasn't really. I mean, using a knife, cutting leather, stitching hasn't really been impacted too much. It's a little annoying. It feels a bit weird, but I'm still able to do it somewhat. A few times I've dropped the needle because I can't feel it as well. I just bought my Skyver and it's unbearably loud. Unbearably loud. Are you sure it's the motor? I'm wondering if obviously be careful doing any of this and only use this advice if you're proficient with working with machinery. But in your case, what I would do is just remove the belts from the motors where they connect to the spindles on the machine. Just remove the belt very carefully with the machine off, completely off. Once you've done that, turn the machine back on, and then just use the motors and just see if it is the motors for sure. Because sometimes if there's something wrong with the bearings on the machine, it might sound like it's the motor. I mean, if you're sure it's the motor, I trust you. But just sometimes your ears play tricks on you and it's actually the machine. So last thing you'd want to do is try and replace the motor, and that's not what it was. It would be unusual to have a motor making a lot of noise unless it's worn out and there's something wrong with it. So it really depends on its age as well. Is it something that's within warranty, or is it like a used machine that you bought, or did you buy it a long time ago new? What's the story with it? I drop my needles without surgery. Yeah, it happens. It happens. Definitely one of those things. Talking of dropping my needles, let's relax them for a second so they can spin, just in case there's any twist that's developed through the stitching process. That happens sometimes, which is where a lot of the annoying knots that you get. Sometimes it can be the technique that's going on here that you use, the kind of thread that you're working with. You can get a little bit of a twist, and that annoyingly results in knots occurring at the worst possible times. I've had 1 or 2 knots over the years in a live. That's always fantastic. Carney says, I did. Oh, you do. You've already tried that. The motor is silent when unattached and quite loud when attached. But I can tell the sound comes from the motor. Everything is new. Interesting. So you're saying it's making a noise when it's under load, but it's not making a noise when it's not under load. Well, if it's new, I would probably contact the manufacturer or the supplier if you can, if that's something that's available to you. and just say what gives. I mean, have you managed to, say, go on YouTube and put in the model number of your bell skiver and just see if what it sounds like when someone else is using it? That's one way of checking that out. Or maybe put in the brand in on Instagram through searches and seeing if someone else owns that exact model, and then just DMing them and saying, hey, you know, here's a video of mine working. Does yours sound like this? Just so you can get a frame of reference. I mean, I can't imagine why a motor would be so loud. I mean, mine just hums. You barely know it's on. If I was, I mean, it's only a few feet away. If I was to put it on now, I probably wouldn't hear it. Nicholas says, I was genuinely curious if you were going to have a guest come in to help. Thankfully, we still get you. Yes. Yeah. Find somebody else to do the stitching and the cutting, and I just kind of sit there sipping a cup of tea and saying, do this, do that. That would be nice. It would be a nice welcome break. But no. I gave myself a little bit of rest, but the good thing is this kind of motion and using my fingers and using my touch and keeping my fingers going is actually, the physio was saying that it's actually very good for recovery. Doing highly dexterous and intricate things. It's just very tight. Opening my hand is like really difficult to do, to try and get it flat. It feels like there's a really thick elastic band there stopping me from opening. It's a little bit annoying reaching for a large drink. But hey, you know, I got lucky. Could have been worse. It's nice. I put out an email to everyone and all the students just to say, you know, the next course is going to be a little bit late, guys, because, you know, I've had a bit of an accident, and just explain what happened. And, you know, I literally got hundreds of emails of, you know, well wishes and people sharing their stories of similar things that have happened. And some of them made mine, you know, sound like a paper cut. And literally people have had all the tendons cut in their hand, and oh my God, months of multiple surgeries in order to get use of their hand again. And, you know, for tradespeople that need to work to sustain their, you know, their home and their income and their families and everything. I'm very lucky in that sense. Very fortunate that it hasn't affected me as much as I thought it would. And it really opens your eyes how many people have actually had accidents similar. And mine comes from closing a drawer with a knife in my hand and missing my hand, and the knife hit the drawer, my hand slipped onto it. That's literally what it was. Quite boring, really. I mentioned in my post, I wish it was from defending an orphanage from invading sharks or something, but alas, it was getting ice at 1 a.m. to put in my lemonade. Of all things. Should have been in bed. Didn't it? I did, but nobody has one. Simac 801. Oh, if it's an 801 series bell skiver, I mean, that's what I have. Do you have the same motor as that? Because the 801 is a Chinese version of an older generation Fortuna skiver, and it's a bomb-proof machine. But there's so many brands, Taiso, and, you know, some of the more famous ones that actually just pretty much comes from the same factory, I believe, or maybe one or two factories. Highball it is, says Nicholas. Well wishes for Norway. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So last few inches here on the bag. I'm actually going to move these straps out the way. Good thing, a feature on this is a reinforced part. This is actually a dowel, a hardwood dowel, and then what the handle's attached to. And you can rotate them. I have a bit of tension on them so they don't move around too easily. So you can fold them inside the bag if you want to. So I'll fold that one up, and this one I'll... It's always stiff first of all until it breaks in. So there you go. So that goes inside the bag. So now it's out the way. So that's one of the features of this bag. I wanted to make it a little bit more interesting and a little bit more practical. And that's why there's a handle built in there, and it uses the same dowel, the same reinforcement, so that you can actually carry it like that. Now, I haven't seen the design anywhere. I mean, sure, it exists. It's almost impossible to make something completely original these days, but I thought it'd be quite interesting to create it. And very simple. I mean, that's the idea behind this bag and this course that I'm producing, is simplicity, so that people who are beginners can still take on a course like this and come out with a larger project. Because a lot of the bags that I create and the courses that I create, de Havilland travel bag, the Bloomsbury attaché case, Cutler briefcase, and a few others that are larger projects, they tend to be complex. So, you know, larger increases complexity, but this is one of them where I wanted to reduce that complexity so that anybody can have a go and come out with something that has a really nice finish to it. Not overly complicated, doesn't take too long to produce. And it's versatile because you can make this out of vegetable tan leather as well as chrome tan leather, which is what I'm using here. Makes it a little bit more softer, and you can crunch it up and fold it away if you wanted to. And that's one of the benefits of chrome tan. So this could be folded and put away or stuffed into the back of a car, and it's not really going to pay the price. But you could, if you wanted to, make it from vegetable tanned leather. You won't need much by the way of reinforcement, because it'll be quite a bit stiffer. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what people end up using leather-wise to make this project. I'm actually quite interested to see it. So I can tell now I've actually used way more thread than I needed to. Look at that. And I've only got like 3 inches left. I gave the circumference times by 5. Usually on thick leather, that's what you need, but I think the thread sinking into the soft leather has given me a little bit more. So almost done here. Then it is home for dinner because it's 8:15 at night. And I'm still working away. So I think circumference times 4 on the next one. Didn't need this much length after all. I'd rather have too much and not need it than too little and have to blend in 2 seams, which is difficult with thick thread. If this was thinner thread and a smaller stitch spacing, I probably would have done this in 2. And then just ended one seam and started the next, so that it's very difficult to tell. Usually just before or just after a corner I do that, because you've got an interruption in the pattern and it's more difficult for the eye to pick up any minute changes. Plus the corner you want to keep intact. You don't have a transition where you need strength the most. So we are almost done here. Steven says, I'm only starting, but I can never get nice edges on Chrome 10. Just have to live with inky fingers and Veg 10. It really is a matter of practice. I'm not here to kind of like peddle the courses constantly, but I do have an entire course on how to edge finish with edge paint, which is what you need if you're finishing with Chrome 10. But the main methods of finishing Chrome are a turned edge, which is where you thin the edge of your leather, your piece of it's Chrome 10, okay? So you thin the edges down, and then you fold that edge over, glue it back on itself, and then stitch that. And the edge is the leather itself. So that's one way of doing it. Another way is to get a long strip, and I can use this again, obviously not this wide, and then you glue it onto the edge of the leather, and then you stitch that in place. So that's edge binding or edge paint. Okay, so you can use like a little bottle of this Uniters, for example, high quality edge paint. Don't really want to be messing with something like Fibings. It's not quite edge paint. It's just a glossy edge finish, really. Yeah, something like Uniters, Stahl, Giardini. There's a few good other ones. But it's a matter of practice. It's like anything else. You know, you didn't start out the gate good at saddle stitching. That's going to take time. Like anything else, it just you need to have a sufficient amount of aha moments where you do something slightly differently and you get the finish that you're looking for, or there's some kind of improvement because of that little change you made, and you go, aha, that's how you do it. Oh, that's how that happens. So you need a few of those, and the only way to get those is constant practice. And I always recommend, if it's cutting leather, if it's stitching leather, if it's edge finishing leather, I don't care if it's, hot stamping leather, practice off your projects. Don't use your projects to figure out how to do something. If you're going to do that, if it's a very simple, card holder or something, that's fine. But ideally, take scrap pieces of leather, good quality pieces of leather, because it takes an expert to use bad leather. I'll tell you that now. So if you think I'm going to use some couch leather to practice on, no. You need good quality leather, practice off your projects with scrap pieces, simulate what you're going to eventually use in your projects first, and get that time in. It might take a few hours of practice and trying different things, but that's really what it takes. Time, effort, and a few aha moments, and you'll get there. I mean, that's the idea behind these courses, is just it speeds up that process. That's it. Gives you new ideas and speeds it up. All right, coming to the end here. This is the last part. So I started with 2 back stitches, and I'm going to finish with 2 back stitches too. Excuse me. Yeah, practice makes perfect. It's old adage, but it's very, very true in this case. And last one. There we go. And you can see the wooden dowels in the ends there. They've been finished. I've used French polish, a shellac finish, very old school, very traditional, but just to stop the wood absorbing water if it's caught in the rain, for example. So Bit of an odd angle, but I'm trying to keep it in shot for you guys. And then making sure, as usual, we have our threads sitting side by side, so there's no proud threads, and it also looks neater. Am I going to be able to pull that through? Oof, just. Same on the inside. Can I pull that through? Yeah. Should probably use my my pliers that I have, which would be ideal, because over pulling on the needles is how you get bent needles, and it's right there. Oof, that would have been hard by hand. There we go. Give it a little trimmy trim, and I'll whack those down in a second. What kind of mistake is the most common to never recover from? I assume you're talking about in Leathercraft. What is the most common mistake to never recover from? Unless you start again or something like that. Maybe if you start stitching with a cast and you forget towards the end of a very long seam, or you forgot to stitch with the cast on the first few inches and then started doing it, and it looks really odd, and you've got to undo the stitches. Yeah, cutting leather. Yeah, so that's actually a good example. It didn't come to mind. If you're cutting with your patterns and the pattern shifts, and you severely undercut, yeah, that's actually a good one. There's no real recovery from that. You can't, well, not easily. You can't add leather. You can stitch in a new piece, but it's going to look a bit weird. Yeah, punching. Yeah, it's it's happened before where you slip with the punch. It's unfortunate. Okay, that feels weird on my hand. Let's try that. Don't copy me, because I can't hold it properly. I keep getting electric shocks up my finger. I once punched wrong, but covered with something else, and that made the end product better. Only happened once though. Yeah. I mean, there are kind of fixes if you punch with your, I mean, not hole punch, obviously, you remove that, but if ever you punch slightly off, as long as it's properly off, you can actually fill the holes with PVA, hammer it down, and use a bone folder to rub it in. I wouldn't do that on a product that I'm selling, but if I'm making myself something, I mean, obviously you don't want to make the mistake in the first place, but things do happen sometimes. Try and hold this. I can't really hammer those corners, so I'm just using some duckbill pliers just to hammer those in. All right, Now this needs straightening out. It's full of creases at the moment, but I'll give you an idea of what this looks like. So there we go. Okay, so that's one side stitch, still needs edge finishing, obviously. And that is how you hold the tote. Obviously, I look rather dashing with this. And you can grab one side, open it so, reach in. A little tip, if you're making a tote bag, the bottom of it, the inside bottom of it, should be about level with your knuckles. So it's just a little tip for you guys, so that when you put your hand in there, you've got a slight bend in it with your fingers straight as you're grabbing things. So it just makes it easier if you ever reach in from the same side. But a lot of the time people reach in from the opposite side, but it still gives you a good height to work with if you're making a custom bag. Now this isn't meant to, but it does actually stand up by itself. But it's meant to be kind of a slouchy bag that you could throw anywhere you wanted to. You could probably make this and put a little strap around it so it holds it tight, or have it so that the handle attaches to something and holds it in place. But that's the idea behind working with chrome tan. It's just so versatile in that sense. Very scratch resistant, very water resistant. And yeah, so that is the leather tote bag. So this course, probably a few more days left, and then I will release the video. Just need to do some edge finishing on camera, go over how to finish the edges. But yeah, should be done. All right, cool guys. Thank you for joining me. Thanks for the conversation, asking questions and interacting. It makes a great little community here on YouTube every time I go live, so appreciate that. Thank you for all the well wishes for the for the mangled hand. But I will see you guys again on the next video when I go live, and hopefully I'll put a shout out before I do, so you guys will know. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.